All right. It was a little crazy pre-show, but that just means that we are ready to rock. Week 3 is upon us in the college football streets. We've got plays, we've got bets, we've got DFS picks, and we're here to answer your questions at Stochastic. I am Ben Rasa. I am joined, as I always am, by my good friend Matt Gajewski. Both of us scrambling a little before the show, making sure we've got everything situated for this 14-game slate. You've looked at the board. Week 3. It's not the best card, but there's still some attackable spots, is there not?
Plenty of attackable spots. College football is still fresh. So anytime we can get a week like this, I think it's better to have it early when people are still really excited. And it's a little appetizer because if you guys haven't peeked ahead to week 4, my goodness, that slate is loaded. But we're here to talk about week 3. Let's break it down, man.
Let's break it down. Absolutely. I see chat ready to rock. You guys want to hit the like button. It is appreciated. Helps us out. We're going to be telling you some cool stuff about the show, what we've got going on with not just college football, with NFL a little later. But first, let's start knocking down these games because we got a lot to get to. Some big spreads, some teams that probably aren't relevant. But we start with Florida State going up to Chestnut Hill. It's kind of a weird spot for them. You know, they're riding high, beat LSU, crushed Southern Miss, 24.5-point favorites, 47-point total. So let's start with the Seminole side because they're the one you probably want, if anything. Are they playable, and who really stands out for you?
I think this game is pretty sneaky on the Florida State side. The spreads come way down and the totals come down because of the hurricane. And all indications are that it's missing Boston College. And if we get any weather, it's just light rain. So the total started to come back up. I project this total in the mid-50s if you didn't have any weather. Florida State does have some motivation stuff. They play Clemson next week. That game's on the road. So it's definitely a look-ahead spot. But some of the players I thought might be out are going to play in the game. Johnny Wilson's playing. He got banged up last week. He's really the main one. Some other guys are offensive linemen, defenders. That doesn't really matter against Boston College. It's a bad team. So right away at the price, we get Travis at today, 9,700. He's just going to be really contrarian, which is why I'm somewhat interested. The same thing goes for Trey Benson. And then, of course, Keon Coleman, Johnny Wilson, and Jaheim Bell are the main pass catchers. So right away, I think you're working with a hyper-contrarian Florida State team, and I'm willing to sprinkle them in my lineups. Earlier in the week when I was just messing around with the slate, I was Xing them out, but I think these are guys you want to sprinkle. Nothing crazy. I'm under 5% on all of the major Florida State guys, but if you're running multiple lineups, I don't think you want to X them. Boston College, you probably want to X.
Yeah, so I wanted to ask, Boston College, they lost to Northern Illinois. They beat Holy Cross by 3 points. I'm not sure if that's a positive or a negative. They're all very cheap, but as you already kind of alluded to, there's not much to talk about. I see their running back is also sporting a Q tag here.
Yeah, Garwell, I don't think plays, and they're going to use a committee behind him in my anticipation.
Pretty simple game then. So you got some Florida State players, maybe mostly tournament centric though, nothing huge.
Absolutely.
Okay, for cash. Easy enough. Let's keep it moving. Again, we got a lot of games to get to. No reason to waste time on teams that are probably not overly relevant to this slate. Now we've got a game that I think is a little more relevant to the slate. A 10-point spread here with Louisville, with Indiana. Talk to me about this game. A little healthier total, not much more, but just a little north of 50, and Indiana as a home dog.
Interesting game for DFS. I don't want any part of Indiana. They moved to Taven Jackson as their main signal caller, former 4-star Tennessee recruit. Christian Turner is out, but they're still going to have 2 backs in Jalen Lucas and Josh Henderson. Cam Camper is playing, but he's not fully healthy. So right away, it's basically a complete X-out spot for Indiana. If you're running projections, anything like that, you're not going to get much, if any of them. I didn't get any. Louisville has a really cheap Jamari Thrash. I think he's in your cash lineup, or at least one of maybe 5 receivers you're considering. The guy has 15 targets, 24% target share. They played an FCS team last week, and he barely played in the second half, so you only see 6 targets. That probably would have been 12 if they played a competent opponent. Thrash immediately stands out to me. I think Plummer's interesting in contrarian builds. This is a Jeff Brom air raid. Their pass rate so far is about 47.5%. Expect that to climb to like 55% in competitive games. The spread is within 10, so Indiana's expected to push them enough where Louisville doesn't take their foot off the gas. And the total here, 50 points, right around there. Not great. I think that mostly comes from Indiana's incompetence. Louisville's implied team total still around 30 here. You can play the stacks. The backfield's tough for me because you're getting Maurice Turner back. He'll be joining Jawar Jordan and Isaac Garendo. I'd rather avoid this backfield. It just comes with opportunity costs, having it split 3 ways.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at our screen right now. And we're just giving you a peek of the potential ownership. And it seems like Thrash is on kind of an island by himself for this game. He's a clear play, can fit a lot of different builds. And then after that, it's a gigantic drop off to Plummer, who you alluded to, and there's not much else behind either of them.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Well put.
And they did play Murray State, the old Racers. So
I watched that game. It was horrible.
You watched that game.
It was on Thursday night, and I would rather watch college football than pro. So, yeah, fair. I watched Bethune-Cookman. I watched Murray State.
I caught a little of that. Van Dyke looked quite good. Level of competition potentially in play there. But, yeah, not much else here. Did you we'll talk about this a little during the show. You want all of it. There's still time to go check out everything at OddsShopper, but did you bet this game at all? I did not touch it in any iteration.
I do not have any bets.
Got to bet on the next game, though. This big game, my most important game of the early slate, is Kansas State and Missouri. It's down to 3.5. It took some money on the Tigers side, 49-point total. Let's start with Kansas State. So this is a team for years they've been on DFS slates. And their skill position players, particularly on the outside, have not been overly relevant. It's a slow offense. It's run-centric. Howard at QB. So far, he's looked great. Southeast Missouri State and Troy, though, leave a little to be desired. So Will Howard, how playable is he today? And then what type of attack do you think Kansas State employs against this Missouri defense?
I don't love Will Howard. I thought I actually might like him more, but there's a certain really cheap quarterback we'll talk about later who's risen in projections a ton as we've gotten news, but Will Howard has not used his mobility to start the year, and he didn't really use it last year. You know, when we saw him in relief 2 years ago, he used it a fair amount, but they're not having him run, and this is going to be his toughest matchup to date by far. Missouri has one of the best defenses in the SEC. You might not know it because their offense is pretty incompetent, but they've got 2 awesome corners here that's going to stop the strength of this Kansas State team. And Kansas State's still searching for answers at one of their O-lineman positions. They've had a starter out to begin the year, and they've had a lot of pressure allowed from the backup. They've kind of had a swinging door at that position. So this is kind of just an opportunity cost thing. A lot of really good signal callers on the slate where I don't think you need to get to Howard at his price. The backfield's a committee, but I think the way you want to attack Missouri's defense is up front. So I got a little bit of Giddens, not much here. He's going to split with Ward, which I don't like. And then the pass catchers, if you're playing them, they're kind of just one-offs. I think there's some volatility here because Keegan Johnson returned from an injury, and I'm worried about him siphoning off some opportunities from the 2 guys at the top, Phillips and Garcia. So I don't know how the target shares are going to break in the future. Like, Johnson only played 30% of the snaps last week. He's certainly going to play more than that when he's fully healthy. I'm not sure who that comes at the expense of, to sum it all up.
Is Sanat in play, their tight end?
They're bringing his price up as he should. He's awesome. 4,500, not quite as enticing as he was when he was like 3,500, but he's going to be an every down player. Worried about upside there's a lot of mispriced receivers here too. You've got Thrash, you've got Corley, you've got the Duke guys. A lot of really cheap guys I would play over him, so he would just be a contrarian one-off.
For the other side, again, this is a big game, I think, for Missouri. I don't want to overstate it. I know it's not a conference game, but if they're really building something, and I think that they are, you got to find a way at home to handle a good Kansas State team. Last week, I thought that Missouri really geared down against Middle Tennessee State. They won by 4 points, but it wasn't an overly competitive game. What do you expect here? Is Brady Cook playable? Let's start there. And then what else for Missouri's offense do we need to take notice of?
I like him a little more than Howard, but they play a similar game. The reason I like him a little bit more is because he has awesome rushing upside, and we've seen it in the past. They haven't been in competitive games, and you mentioned their most recent game. In the last 4 minutes, they allowed a touchdown and a safety. Otherwise, they would have killed Middle Tennessee State, and they definitely took their foot off the gas in the second half. Didn't use Cook as a runner. In competitive games, they've shown that they will. So that's something that at least piques my interest. With that said, a lot of opportunity costs at quarterback. He's not a guy I'm heavily invested in.
Anything on the outside, we know that, if he has a big game, or even if he doesn't, they're going to need Luther Burden to step up here and honestly maybe lead them offensively. It's not an overly high total, but you look at him, he's sitting at 5,900 over on DraftKings. He crossed the 100-yard bonus in week 2. He had 96 yards in week 1, 15 catches through 2 games. Where does he fall? I know you mentioned how deep receiver might be in terms of paydowns today. What about Burden, though?
Like Burden a lot as a one-off. They're going to force feed him targets with Dominic Lovett transferring to Georgia. We've already seen it, and they were actually doing it last year when Lovett was on the team. I think you can get to him. He's just going to have immense opportunity. I have him in 6% of lineups, so nothing crazy, but he definitely should pop up as a one-off. And if you just want to be a contrarian here and there, Burden's a nice play. I'm a little worried about the timeshare here. They've used Nathaniel Pete with Cody Schrader, and they did that to start last year. So I don't know the answer to this, but I think maybe Nathaniel Pete got banged up at some point last year. Don't expect the full 25 carry Cody Schrader workload unless they have this game firmly in control. So he's kind of a guy at 7,300. I mean, he's really expensive for a game that has a 49 total in Missouri, still coming in as a slight underdog, even though they're at home. Another opportunity cost play. I would say Burden is by far my favorite play on this entire game, game.
Yeah, I mean, we've gone through 3 games and every total's been within a couple points of each other. This is the most competitive of the 3 games. I think it's a better betting game than DFS game. I think Missouri can get this done. I really hope so. This feels like one of these where I look back and I'm just like, why did I back this team? But at home, you got to find a way. And I think Burden can lead that way. He's a future, that guy can play. He's just a sophomore, right?
Burden, yes.
Yeah. So we'll be seeing him soon enough on Sundays. I do want to get to LSU and Mississippi State, but I want to mention, speaking of Sundays, actually, how about that? I incepted myself to talk a little NFL in this show because Owner's Box is sponsoring us today. And you probably heard, if you've watched our NFL shows, about Owner's Box. If you haven't, though, let me just mention what they've got going on. A new platform over there. First of all, it's like college football because you're able to play 2 quarterbacks. They've got the super flex, just like we talk about here. And if you have not signed up over there, link is below, and you're going to get a whole bunch of stuff upon doing that. They've got a deposit match, drip bonus up to $500. So when you can put in some money, you want to put the whole thing in, you're going to be getting a lot of money coming back over time. But in addition, whether you deposit $10 or $500, you are going to get 1 week free of our NFL Sims Max package. That's a $59.95 value. Big time stuff. You've seen all the stuff about the Sims. Now is your chance to try them out for free for a whole week. If you have success, maybe you stick with it. If not, you got to see what is behind the paywall with the Sims Max Pass. So link description below. Get in there. Not to mention, final point, contests are overlaying. They're putting up some lofty prize pools, and they did not fill to the max last week. So if you are looking for a different format where your dollar goes a little further, check out Owner's Box. Again, link is below. Shout out to them for sponsoring this show. Shout out to LSU and Mississippi State for bringing out one of the better games of the week in a week 3. That was hard to say, but it's true. All of that was accurate if you play it back. 9.5 point road favorite for LSU. We know they have no margin for error, so I want to just start with them. Daniels and co. What do you expect against Mississippi State?
Love this game for tournaments. It's going to be slightly owned, but there's some volatility here. So can we start with the Mississippi State side, actually? Because I think they're like the key to the game.
Okay.
Because you mentioned this to me before the stream, and you've been answering a lot of questions on this game. With the passing of Mike Leach, this team has done a complete 180. The new coaching staff is a ground and pound team. They're 116th in pace. They have a 34% pass rate to start the year. But they haven't been in the most competitive spots. Arizona game would have been more competitive if Jaden Delora didn't have so many turnovers. He actually dissected this team through the air. We'll mention that when we get to the LSU side. But with Mississippi State, because they've had such control of games, they haven't need to air it out. The big question is, do they take that approach? Their best avenue to victory is against a rebuilt LSU secondary. They're nearly 10-point underdogs. If you bring the pace up and bring the pass rate up, this total should be above 54. We just don't know. We have no sample with this coaching staff. If they do that, this could be a game that has a total on par with like Wisconsin and Ohio State. So right away, I think what the coaching staff does either unlocks this game or makes it maybe one of the most owned games. So right away on the Mississippi State side, Joe Marks is a guy to be very careful of, I think. Projects extremely well with Mississippi State's current run rate, 19 carries, 24 carries. He's an excellent pass catcher, so I do think he's pretty safe. He should probably be in your cash lineup. But for tournaments, if Mississippi State decides to attack this weakness on the LSU defense through the air, that could come at the expense of Joe Marks. And with that said, on the other side, Mississippi State, their approach to this game could unlock the LSU offense and a potential shootout. Jaden Daniels, awesome so far. I don't think he gets the credit he deserves. Extremely mobile. We know this. He takes care of the ball, so he's not always pushing it downfield. But when you have Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors, how much do you really need to do that? Just put the ball in your playmakers' hands, let them create. And he's done that, which has been awesome for them scoring points. He's averaging over 300 passing yards per game. Think he's one of the best signal callers on the entire slate. I do want to stack him, even though he's very mobile. The pass rate for LSU is insane, up above 60%. They got crushed by Florida State somewhat because of their own doing, but played a cupcake last week and kept the pass rate high. The pace for LSU is insane. They're 11th in the country. This all comes down to, can Mississippi State match them? Do they decide to match them? And we don't have the answer, which I think makes it awesome for GPPs. I'd focus on Daniels, Neighbors, Thomas, Lacey, and Joe Marks mainly, but I think stacks of this entire game could be contrarian. I think a lot of people are going to have the one-offs with Marks and Neighbors, but a full game stack here could be contrarian and could be something that unlocks the slate.
Could you go as far in terms of the game stack to put Rodgers in those stacks where you have both quarterbacks?
Rodgers is a little expensive. Last year, he was kind of a cheat code because he would get 300-yard bonuses almost every week in the Mike Leach system. He takes a lot of sacks, so he is reliant on the elevated pass attempts. But again, we don't know. We don't know what Mississippi State is going to do under the new system. I think for tournaments, you can play him. There's a lot of opportunity cost and significant downside because he's a guy that could end up with like 6 points in your lineup. If he throws for like 225 and takes like 5 sacks, and has negative 30 rushing yards, that could be real detriment to your lineups. But again, he's also live for 300 yards if they decide to throw.
Anything, because you rattled off a ton of players and it seems like they're all in very good spots. The LSU backfield, are they more on the outside looking in terms of priorities?
So this is the showdown, and I love taking the backfield there.
Okay.
Just, man, I have no idea who they're going to give the work to. LSU is evaluating a ton of guys. They're playing a lot of young kids, especially on defense. Their offensive line, they've already made some switches, and they made a switch in the backfield. Their first game, like Trey Bradford played a ton. I wasn't expecting that. Noah Cain and Josh Williams, that was their 3-man committee. Last week against an FCS team, they brought Caleb Jackson into the fold, their freshman. He played extremely well, and they actually got Logan Diggs, the Notre Dame transfer, involved. Today, they will also have Goodwin and John Emery, presumably. I don't know where they factor into things. You got a complete dice roll on your hands. If I were to rank them, it would be Diggs 1, Jackson 2, Josh Williams 3, but I do not feel confident in that. They're a showdown team for me in the backfield. I'm not going to play them on the main slate.
Yeah, I didn't bet this game. Quincy was asking Mississippi State 9.5. I don't mind that. I don't know what to make of this. I think this is a tough spot, honestly, for both teams. It's just a stay away for me.
I took the over.
Yeah, you like the over. I know that. I like the over in the next game. Penn State and Illinois. It's sitting 47.5, 48. I've been really impressed with Penn State. They're about a 2-touchdown favorite here. I know that Delaware is not serious competition, but West Virginia is kind of serious. Now, it was in Happy Valley, no doubt about it. Now they have to hit the road. But talk to me about what they've got going on. They've got weapons all over the field with those backs, Lambert, Smith, and obviously the quarterback has stepped in nicely to take over for Clifford.
Yeah, Aller's been solid.
Yes.
He's a guy I definitely want to play in tournaments. The sample size on him is very small. He looks like he can run a little bit. He's not going to be Daniels out there or anything crazy, but Aller's a guy that's not going to take a lot of sacks by the looks of it. Illinois' D-line has been a real disappointment. That was supposed to be the strength of their team. And Drew Aller's been awesome through the air. He can definitely beat up a completely remade Illinois secondary. I have no issues playing him. He's a guy I made sure to get some exposure to. I'll pull it up right now. I'm sitting at 8%, Drew Aller, stacking him mainly with Keandre Lambert Smith. Just don't know a lot about Penn State under the new system. They could absolutely roll Illinois, and I wouldn't be entirely surprised. Their implied team total's up above 30 points. So, I mean, you've got upside here. No issues playing Aller. Again, I think every single one of these stacks I'm looking at here has him with Keandre Lambert-Smith. Backfield's tricky. It's kind of like Wisconsin, Ohio State, Michigan. You just have two premier runners in Katron Allen, Nick Singleton. Sprinkling these guys, they're both under 10% for me, but I have some of both.
On the other side, Altmaier, he can move, but it's a really tough ask against that front. Is Illinois really relevant in this spot, or do you think that they kind of just do their part to, lose gracefully and they don't stand out?
That's a good way to put it. Maybe a contrarian Isaiah Williams. Do not like their matchup here against this fierce Penn State defense.
Yeah, their backfield's a mess to begin with.
Sure is.
Yeah. Is Aller cash viable?
I don't think so.
Definitely 2 quarterback type day.
Yeah, there's a stone lock in cash. We'll talk about him, but
let's talk about your boys. So Wisconsin, they get another shot at it. They're 20-point favorite back at home, 65.5-point total, healthy total here. They're the team we probably know more about. So I actually want to start on the other side. Georgia Southern comes in. This is a team we don't get to see often. It seems like they can rack up some points. Now you want to talk about the Citadel and UAB type teams. It's a little different, but what is the mentality of this team? What is the pace of this team? What do we need to know about Georgia Southern?
Oh man, you're in for a treat. A lot of my friends are going to this game. Jealous of you. Georgia Southern is pure air raid.
Okay.
So awesome to watch. Like, they're just hyper exciting. Even if they get blown out in this game, like, it's going to be exciting, even in garbage time, because of the way they play. They're fast. They pass 66% of the time to start this year. Davis Brin's a veteran signal caller for them. He doesn't take a ton of sacks. Now, competition hasn't been great, so maybe he takes more against Wisconsin, although I haven't been impressed with Wisconsin's defense. Brin, I think, is a decent contrarian play. He's like Will Rogers to a degree last year, where he's probably going to backdoor his way to a lot of 300-yard bonuses. Just not sure if Wisconsin's the team he does it against. With that said, you can definitely play his receivers. They're all extremely cheap, and this team throws the ball at an insane clip. Derwin Burgess, 18 targets so far. Caleb Hood, 16. Tight end J.J. McAfee, he had 10 targets last week. Syracuse transfer Anthony Quealy had 7. I'm playing a lot of these guys. I'm mixing and matching them. I'm definitely, every time I have a Wisconsin player, I'm running it back with one of these Georgia Southern receivers, and I'm comfortable using them a ton as one-offs. That's where I focus my attention primarily. You want to be contrarian with the game. Using Davis Brin to stack with them will be very contrarian.
So this is not overly relevant, but you'll know this. Georgia Southern, they must have changed philosophies. Were they not a triple option school in the recent years?
2 years ago, their new coach is, what's his name, from USC? Clay Helton.
Okay.
He was hired last year. They brought in that former Buffalo signal caller. Forget that guy's name too. But he's gone now. They were pure air raid. This is their second year, pure air raid.
Gotta love the pure air raid. That is straight gold for DFS slates. And it's going to set the stage, of course, for Wisconsin, who's a sizable, they're near 3 touchdown favorite. So we're going to talk, of course, Chez and Allen, but I actually want to ask you about Taylor Mordecai. Where does he fit in today? He hasn't been great. 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. Is he a contrarian option within a great game, or do you think that he's just someone we don't want to mess around with? I'm
so frustrated with Tanner Mordecai.
I bet you
played
are.
Him. Yeah, I've been above the field the last 2 weeks. You can tell how that went. Anyway, Mordecai is a pretty good sample of being a solid signal caller. It's with SMU in a different offense, so that needs to be noted. But he does have some mobility. He's been awesome passing the ball, and he's in an offense that's pretty voluminous. In this game, you should see Wisconsin run more. Their pass rate's 52% on the year. I would expect this to be around 45 to 50% pass. But I mean, the receivers also haven't done Mordecai favors. I keep referencing that bomb that Skylar Bell dropped in week 1. I believe it was Skylar Bell. You guys in the chat can correct me if I'm wrong, but it's like an 80-yard touchdown. Would have looked awesome for Mordecai's stat line. He's had some of those in addition to the poor decisions he's made. I can't excuse the interceptions. I watched every interception he threw. They've been bad. But because of the offense and the huge team total at 43 points, Mordecai's not going to be owned. In this offense, he's a guy that has the requisite upside to play. So put me down 3rd consecutive week being over the field with Mordecai. I don't have a preference among the pass catchers. They're basically using Will Pauling, Skylar Bell, and Bryson Green evenly. Routes are even. Targets are extremely narrow between these guys. Braylon actually leads the team in targets. I would not expect that to persist. But yeah, I'm going to play some contrarian Mordecai stacks. We'll see how it goes. It hasn't gone well so far.
So I kind of want to ask you about that very thing. Do you think it's okay, / do you have Mordecai with one of his running backs and just say, I think there could be 80 points in this game. May not be super correlated, but just give me all the Wisconsin offense.
I still X that out. Or I guess I made a rule to not have that.
We did have a question from chat. Drew Seeley, do you like Burgess in this game for Georgia Southern over a Luther Burden?
Yes.
Okay. So this really is, I mean, I'm just looking at the sidebar here. You could argue that this is one of, if not the best game in terms of just potential shootout.
This, Ohio State, and then LSU's the sneaky one.
Okay. That makes sense. Anything else from this game? One of the more important, seems like you can get to a lot of different iterations. Do you have a preference with Ches versus Allen, or is it just, flip the coin?
I think Allen's the guy you want to go to. He's definitely the pass catcher, but I think you're going to see a massive gap in ownership between the two. Allen, he's out-touched Ches 38-25. That's mainly pass catching. Ches has actually out-carried him. Again, Wisconsin's a 20-point favorite here, 3 scores. This should be pretty even workload-wise between Braylon and Ches. Ches is going to be contrarian, man. He's going to be on the field. He's probably going to finish with 15 touches. For you contrarian guys, I don't mind playing Ches, but Braylon is rightfully very owned today.
Yeah, we're looking again. You can check out all our ownership, the projections, the data sheets, all of that. It's in the links below. CFB DFS Weekly. Get in there, sign up, save some money, and save some time for yourself, if nothing else. Let's keep it moving. There is only one FCS school on this slate, and it is Weber State. When I did the run sheet, I thought that Washington State and Utah were squaring off, and I was thinking, what kind of line is this? How could it be 4 touchdowns? And now I've dug in a little more, and I realized that Weber State has come to town. They're not a pushover, but still not a great situation. Talk to me about this team. Again, they don't see level of competition like this. Does that render them useless?
They must be a pretty decent FCS team because they're only about 4 score underdogs. I was expecting. I mean, I don't know a ton about Weber State. I know they're a good FCS team, but I was still like, all right, they're playing Utah. They should probably be like 5 or 6 score underdogs, but books have them around 4. Maybe that keeps them competitive enough to push Utah. They still have a team total around 11 points. I mean, Damon Blankston is the min price at running back. He'd be the guy you look to. I still don't think I can do it, honestly, though. Like, what is the opportunity cost of the running back position? Yeah. There's cheap players all over the place. Like, you could very easily build a lineup you like without Blankston and have awesome players at every position. So to me, I just don't know if you need to. I guess if you flat out you build a lineup, you love it, but you need a min guy. Throw Blankston in there. He's the safest min price guy today, but I just don't see the need for it.
Yeah, we were having questions in chat about that, pay down option. Obviously, this is the ultimate pay down option, but I agree. You don't know. Weber State last year dominated an FBS school, but not the caliber of Utah, and they're still 4 touchdown underdog. I think that speaks to that they're not a pushover, but they're also supposed to get absolutely smoked in this spot. And I want to ask you about the other side. I mean, we've been dealing with this since opening week with the Florida game. Is Cam Rising really going to debut in a situation like this, or do you think they just say, we don't need him here, let's wait longer?
I would be utterly shocked if he plays. He was not cleared to play earlier this week. We haven't got news. Like, he could have gotten cleared, I guess, but there's 2 ways to look at this. One, I mean, like, why would you possibly put him in this game?
Yeah, why?
Like, how much does this game matter versus just like practice reps? But the other thing is, like, some coaches like guys knocking off rust. And if you were to pick a team to knock rust off against, it would be Weber State. Watch this closely, but I would be utterly shocked if he played. That brings us to Nate Johnson. He played a lot in the 4th quarter of their last game. Coach announced he's surpassed Barnes. This guy has elite mobility. Early in the year, they were just using him in Wildcat packages. So, I mean, he's the stone min for quarterbacks in DraftKings. He should be in your cash lineup without a doubt.
So that is a put him in cash, quarterback kind of pseudo plug and play. Do you look to pair him up or do you just run him for his mobility alone?
I'm running him naked. I'm not stacking him with anybody.
Okay. So easy enough. Does that render Utah's backfield, in a worse off situation considering this guy's got equity on the ground?
It's narrower than it has been. They lost Micah Bernard, their pass catching back. So Jaquindon Jackson, he filled in for that role. I don't think they're going to need to throw, but Jaquindon was basically a 2-down grinder prior to the Bernard injury. Now he has more outs, and he's still going to be their lead back on the ground. He had 19 carries last week. I just made a rule not to play Johnson and Jaquindon together. They are negatively correlated pretty severely, but you want to play both these guys if you're running multiple lineups.
A couple questions. We've got, this isn't on the slate, but can you take this real quick? If Judson is out, Bentley the next man up. I assume they're talking about Ole Miss. Yeah,
Judkins already ruled out. Ulysses Bentley's next guy up. Play Ulysses Bentley on FanDuel. He should be in your cash lineup over there.
Yeah, Judkins he's a player. Love that guy.
Bentley's good too. He played at SMU. He was hurt last year. Productive 2 years ago. I like Bentley.
Marks for Mississippi State or Chaz?
Marks.
We'll get to Riley Leonard in just a bit, but let's knock out Central Michigan. Is Central Michigan in the Bowling Green category of team that has no useful players today?
X amount.
Notre Dame is on the other side of that game, 34.5-point favorites. They've been beaten up on some teams. They did get a little test, probably a good test for them against NC State. Estime, Hartman, these guys, what do we expect today in a lopsided matchup?
Just playing Estime. We've seen Hartman really limited in blowout games, mainly on the ground. Like, he had an awesome rushing upside when he was with Wake Forest, but they haven't used him at all in that regard. Their run rate's really high. I just don't see the need to use Hartman on a 14-game slate with tons of other options. He's also hard to stack. They run a rotation at receiver and tight end, which is pretty nasty. So it's just Estime or pass.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it. It's a 5-touchdown spread. I don't think that that's something that we really need to get crazy with. Not a great game. I don't think it has a ton of variance, which can be a bad thing here. Let's see what goes on elsewhere. Northwestern, they're a 17-point underdog. They did smoke my UTEP team, which just makes me sad. That just makes me sad. But Northwestern, I think it's still pretty clear, has some issues. What do you make of them? And then we'll talk about Duke, who's been very impressive so far.
I only have Cam Porter from this team. It's close to a feature back role. It's tough because you've seen him blow out loss and blow out victory. They did not use him a ton in that loss, and his route rate wasn't great. Like, he's not Evan Hull, but I don't think he's that far off. He still had 5 targets in that game. You just wish the route rate was a little better than 31%. Like, Evan Hull was up like at 80%. So it's not the full Evan Hull workload, but it's pretty damn close. 17 rush attempts last game. Northwestern stinks, but Porter's only 4,300. That's really what does it for me, is you've got a really cheap back here who has close to a feature back workload. You can play Porter, I think. There's 2 backs in this range I think a lot of people are going to go to. The other one's on Tulane. I think he'll be more owned than Porter.
Is Porter phased out if it gets out of hand, or can he catch the ball?
5 targets week 1. That was a blowout loss. But again, the route rate's at 31%. It's not fantastic. Decent, not great.
Decent, not great. A lot of questions so far about Riley Leonard. Is he a good second quarterback in? Is he cash viable? He's 6,700. We know that he's got mobility. He almost crossed the 100-yard mark against Clemson's front. Then they played Lafayette. Wasn't needed. What do you make of Leonard in this spot?
Yeah, love Leonard. I think he's a solid second cash game quarterback.
Anything kind of opening up the Duke offense? We see Leonard there going to be popular. We see Porter. Duke's backfield, again, it was a little unknown. I didn't know for the Clemson game they were going to be missing their guy, and Water stepped up. Calhoun, what do we make of these guys, and what else do we need to know about Duke?
I think they get Coleman back today,
okay,
which makes this tricky. 3 guys. I'm not playing any of them. You'd have to get Coleman ruled out late. So this is probably, like a late swap situation more than anything else.
If we get that word, I mean, is that something that you're going to look to, or is it just kind of let that be? We don't need to try to infer what that workload might be.
I sure hope not. Let's hope I'm not buried in the first round of games, but we'll see.
A couple of questions, a little random before we get to some of the other games here. We got any interest in Wake Forest Old Dominion on FanDuel?
Not a ton.
It's a decent total, but that's a weird
Old Dominion stinks, but
yeah, they're bad. They're bad. I don't think Wake Forest is any good, but they're better than.
I definitely have interest on the Wake Forest side. Wake Forest is pretty narrow target distribution. I play the receivers over there for sure.
We got, is Emory in play at the flat min for LSU in terms of that backfield?
He might play like 2 snaps. I don't know. I would say no.
And then we had a question about Bryn for Georgia Southern. Is he a must if running Burgess and Hood?
I made a rule to only play one Georgia Southern skill player unless stacked with Bryn. And then I think you probably, if Bryn accesses that ceiling, it's probably he throws 4 touchdowns. Double stacking him is definitely in play.
There we go. Easy enough. And that makes sense. Like you mentioned, for him to tap into that ceiling, you're probably going to want more than one on the outside. San Diego State is the first team in the country to play 8 games through week 3. So impressive to them. They're on the slate again. I don't really understand what goes on there. They're going to get smoked by Oregon State, who we knew they were good, but they might be really good. It's 24.5 now, a 48-point total. Think about that implied total for San Diego State. I've been shorting them all year to various degrees of success. It should have been more successful. Maiden and Co. seem like they've got big problems in that spot. Do you confirm that?
Yeah, X amount.
Yeah, bad situation for them. But on the other side, so this Oregon State team certainly is in no hurry. We know that. But Martinez, 6,400. This is a guy that's going to get a lot of work in non-blowout games. Where does he stack up amongst the running backs today?
He should be in your cash lineup. He's awesome. Number 1 running back play on the board for me.
He really is awesome, by the way. I love that guy. Just a good player. When we look to him, I assume that means, because I want to go through everyone on this team, Fenwick doesn't get enough work to be viable.
I don't think so. He played a lot in the blowout, but Martinez was out of that game early.
Yeah, very early. I mean, it was the FCS school and it was in hand pretty quickly. And then, of course, let's talk about DJ. Uwagale comes in. He's been awesome so far. No turnovers, taking care of the ball. He's got 3 rushing touchdowns. He's 9,000 though. Is that just too premium of a price to pay for him?
Yeah, they've got the training wheels on him in these games. I think it's too much. They're not using him on designed runs. I think they will in more competitive games. We're quickly approaching 4 touchdown favorites here. They've taken an absurd amount of money to start the week.
Oh yeah, this has moved a lot. We talked about that over on Betting You again. You can always check that out. Odd Shopper YouTube. Go over there if you like betting, by the way. It's a good time. You'll enjoy yourself. But yeah, I don't know really what else is actionable in this game. Long story short, is it Martinez and then everybody else?
Yes, I'm only playing Martinez from this whole game.
Okay, well, that makes it easy. Don't need to really talk about the pass catchers then as well. Yeah. Anything else? I know you bet this and you got a real good number, right?
21.5.
Woo.
I bet it on Sunday though. I mean, I bet this way far in advance.
Hey, sometimes you got to do that. No problem there. I think if you can find inside 24, it's still a go. Because I have no respect for San Diego State. I'm a noted Aztec hater. Sorry. I do like the basketball team. But South Carolina and Georgia, SEC battle here. It's a 27-point spread, 54-point total. South Carolina, a lot of people were very high on them coming into the year. And I'm not saying it's all over, but North Carolina kind of knocked them down a little bit. Then they played Furman. Let's not get crazy. Spencer Rattler, I assume going up against Georgia's defense, it doesn't get much worse than that. And with so many games, 14 games, we don't really want to get to Rattler.
Right. I'm not playing anyone in South Carolina.
Well, that makes it tougher to talk about Joyner then. No good. Even with his ability to catch some passes, just not enough.
That's what he was like. They had negative rushing yards against North Carolina. Georgia is going to Georgia has only had 2 starters play more than 50% of the snaps this year. If South Carolina keeps it even remotely close, they're going to murder Rattler and Dak Joyner.
It does seem quite dire. Now, on the other side, I want to talk about this team, though, because I haven't been really paying attention to Georgia because there's nothing to pay attention to. Everybody's just chilling out. 48-7, 45-3, Tennessee, Martin, Ball State. This is a big step up in competition, but clearly they should handle it in Athens. But what do you expect from Carson Beck? We still don't really know what's going on here. Guy's got some mobility. How do you think he is utilized in a game that could be a little more competitive?
Yeah, new OC too. They've been testing out some stuff. Pass rates at 55% despite clobbering teams. I think they're just trying to iron out some kinks in their offense before they get into the heart of SEC play. I don't know that this is that. South Carolina, at least bookmakers don't think that this is going to be a test for Georgia. Beck has immense upside, man. We just don't know anything about him. And unlike a Kyle McCord or something, he's passed every step of the way. You know, like McCord's underwhelmed in these games, whereas Beck's been just fine. Exactly what we thought he was going to do. If he ends up being like even what Stetson was last year, he's probably going to be a 9K quarterback down the road. And Georgia's never going to have a low implied team total here. So taking shots on Beck makes sense. And I like the stacks more than I normally would because DK, asleep at the wheel, kept Dominic Lovett at 5,200. Brock Bowers is at 47. And these guys are priced all low because they have single-digit targets, everyone on the team with the exception of Lovett. He's sitting right at 10. But they haven't played more than half the game. I mean, if this game stays within 27.5, if it's, God forbid it plays to 21, Brock Bowers is going to play the whole game. You have immense upside here with this Georgia passing attack. I'm comfortable playing Lovett, Bowers, and Arian Smith would be the top 3 I get to. Backfield's a little trickier because DeJuan Edwards is projected to return today. Milton would be my favorite. But even there, that's probably more of a rotation. I think you get the narrowing for Georgia in the pass catchers.
Beck over 254.5 passing yards on Prize Picks.
I bet that.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. Yeah, I mean, I am interested to see exactly what Georgia brings to the table here. It still should be a dominant defensive front. We had a question about, let's see. Let me see where this guy's priced before I say something crazy. Wells, 5,500.
Antwain Wells?
Yeah.
Yes, he's fit. He's where is he? Yeah, he's 55. Sorry, I was just double checking. Wanted to make sure we had the right Wells. I figured it was.
Me too.
Talking about the game.
Yeah, a lot of moving parts there. It's just tough when there are so many ways that South Carolina ends with 0, 3, 7, 10 points in this game. And it's like you need a lot to break your way to get there.
Wells has exited games already this year with injuries. I have questions about his health.
Yeah, that's not ideal either. All right, we got 3 more games. I do want to say real quickly before we get to these games, I've alluded to a lot of bets already. And again, if you're not on Odd Chopper, you want to be over there. But one of the things we've talked about a bunch there, Caesars, if you're in a state that allows you to do some wagering, does have a fantastic promo going right now. It's supposed to end in just a couple of days. So we got to tell you now or you might miss it. And what it is, link below in the description, you click it and you sign up. You bet $50. Win, lose, or draw, you're getting back $250 in bonus bets. The way it's paid out is pretty cool. Each week, you're greeted with a $50 bonus bet, 5 straight weeks. So you can use that maybe for a crazy parlay you wouldn't normally play. You can just use it and add it to the bankroll or do something else. But really cool stuff by Caesars. And it's just another book that gives you the ability to hopefully get the best line available. It adds up quickly, these half-point edges early in the week. So take advantage of that. You got to be 21 plus. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. But see what they've got going on there. Link in the description below. Maybe you take that $50 and you put it on Alabama as a 34-point favorite. My goodness. This is a get-right spot for them if I've ever seen one. They're going to be quite angry. And your boy took over. Buckner gets the call. What do you expect from him? Do you think their offense will look dramatically different?
I think they'll throw a little more. Buckner appears to have more passing upside than Milroe. Milroe basically just a pure dual threat. Buckner's played a fair amount at Notre Dame. His passing stats aren't amazing. He has a sub 60% completion percentage, career yards per attempt at 7.9, but his yards per carry is above 5. He is very mobile. I think he's probably a guy you can play. I'm a little worried about the snaps. How much do they put in Milroe? Do they use Ty Simpson at all? I'm not sure, but he has taken most of the first team reps this week. Implied team total, nearly 48 points. The total of the game is good. USF plays at the speed of light. This is
yes, they do.
Their new head coach is from Tennessee. They're going to play fast. They'll pass more in spots like this. They have a dual threat themselves, but Buckner, I think, is live for tournaments. He's really cheap on FanDuel. He's like your Nate Johnson over there, probably in your cash lineup. Right away, I think you can stack him, more stacking viability than Milroe, because Milroe played the first 2 games, now getting discounts on a lot of these Bama guys. Burton's still expensive, but Bond is fine. Their tight end, Amari Niblack, is playing a ton. He's 4K. His route rate's at 70%. And then I guess McClellan to round it out. He's leading this Bama committee. This is a fantastic matchup for the Bama runners.
Buckner and McClellan together, or is that just no-go for you?
I took it out purposefully.
Okay. On the other side, you mentioned you want to play at the speed of light. They've got some stuff, but you're going against Bama's defense. USF, what do we say here?
Playing at the speed of light is fine in their conference. It's not fine against playing against SEC opponents. They know they're going to lose this game. I just anticipate them trying to run out some kinks of their offense, if that makes sense. Byron Brown is a dual threat. I don't think he has success throwing the ball against Bama. Probably doesn't have success running. 3-way backfield committee. They rotate the hell out of receivers too, which is a real problem.
Question from Chad. Best flex play at 5K or lower?
Oh, man. I got to pull up the projections.
Yeah, you do that. And I'll just say, I think USF is actually on the first steps to being a little more relevant, but you mentioned what Brown can do against in-conference opponents, against Western Kentucky, against Florida A&M types is a lot different than what's going to happen against Alabama's defense.
Best flex below 5K, Malachi Corley 1, Mekhi Hughes 2. I don't have a third handy.
There you go. No problem. Yeah, USF upset. They are drawing to, if you've seen the third Batman, Bane blowing up the stadium style. It's not, I don't see a lot of ways that USF can get this done. I'd love to see that, but I don't. They might cover. 34 is a lot of points, but I don't see anything else there as well. Let's move to another 30-point game, and then we'll bounce out of here in just a little bit, but take a little break, eat a little lunch, and then come back. NFL content coming up on Stochastic, I believe at 1 Eastern. Got a lot to break through. You want to be set up for tomorrow. And again, get situated with Owner's Box so you know what's going on when you take advantage of all that. But you mentioned Corley, Western Kentucky and Ohio State. Ohio State is running out of weeks to figure it out. Yeah, they're winning games, but I don't know. Notre Dame's on deck quickly. Western Kentucky brings an interesting wrinkle to them. Can they move the ball against Ohio State, or are they in the USF bucket?
No, I think they can. And this is a team that's not taking their foot off the gas. So they're live for backdoor stuff. Like maybe they get blown out, but this team's going to continue to implement their offense late in games. Austin Reed's also a really good quarterback. And Ohio State struggled with worse teams than Western Kentucky so far this year. We'll see.
Yes, they have.
We'll see how this goes. But what all this means to me is Western Kentucky can hold their own, I think, in this game to play them in DFS. Reed's really cheap at 5,500. He should be more expensive. He's not like Jaden Daniels, but he doesn't take sacks, and he scrambles enough where he should offset any sacks he does take with some rushing output. Receivers are really cheap here. Malachi Corley expected back, missed their last game. Very clearly, their wide receiver 1. The guy had over 100 catches last year. From there, it's a little dicey with this team. Michael Matheson's still hurt. They have a lot of players questionable, which is very difficult to decipher. This is kind of like a late news gold mine right now. Dalvin Smith is hurt, Craig Burt is hurt, and Josh Stearns are hurt. Because of all these injuries, we've seen them use quite a bit of Easton Messer and Blue Smith. Right now, I think Easton Messer and Blue Smith are fine for tournaments, but if you get news that like Dalvin Smith plays or Craig Burt plays, Josh Stearns, I would downgrade these guys. And if you're down already on the slate, I'd start throwing darts at them, particularly Dalvin Smith. He'd be the number one guy, like your pivot guy, if he's actually active. I don't think he's going to play, but keep your eyes peeled for this Western Kentucky news. This could be a spot where you gain leverage and make up some ground if you're down early.
Would you rather have Austin Reed or Nate Johnson in GPPs?
Nate Johnson.
Yeah, the rushing upside is just so immense. Buckner or Riley Leonard?
Tournament? Oh, straight up Leonard. Tournament Buckner, I think, is an interesting pivot.
And nothing in the Western Kentucky backfield, right?
No.
On the other side of this game, so again, they haven't looked great, but from everything, McCord has the job. It's going to be him for better or worse. He hasn't shown much of anything. Does this type of environment maybe give him a contrarian option, or is it just such a premium tag?
Yeah, for as bad as he's been, bookmakers still very much respecting him. 47.5 total. Ohio State, 54% pass rate. They're throwing the ball around. They're going to continue to do so. They need to iron out these kinks before they get into Big Ten play. And I'm old enough to remember CJ Stroud's first couple games where he looked lackluster in non-con. He could turn this around. I don't think it's an indictment on his career that he's played 2 bad games or 2 lackluster games. He still has Harrison. He still has Ibuka, Fleming, Cade Stover even. Carnell Tate's getting some rotational work, and that kid is awesome. As soon as some of these guys go to the NFL, he's going to be your next man up. All this to say, McCord stacks, I think, are fine. They're way more expensive than some other stacks on this slate. So this is not an area I'm particularly invested in. The way I'm playing Ohio State primarily is still using these one-offs because, you could use McCord and Marvin Harrison, take up an immense amount of salary, or you could just play Marvin Harrison and Nate Johnson. And then you also get like Malik Neighbors, something like that. Because McCord does so much through the air and he's not really a runner, I'm not really worried about him burying me at 9.4K in tournaments, if that makes sense. You're going to need a ton from him to really blow up a slate when we have a stone lock at the min price.
Do you feel the same way about Harrison on the outside?
Harrison, I love playing as a one-off. We've seen McCord already funnel a ton of targets to Harrison, 13 targets last game. You could just very well use Harrison as a one-off. This is a great, I think, skinny stack game where let's just say you're using an LSU Mississippi State stack primarily. You've got Daniels, Neighbors, Joe Marks. That's your game stack. Using a Harrison Corley as your secondary correlation, I think makes a ton of sense.
What about Egbuka and the rest of Ohio State before we move to the last game?
100% think that's viable with these guys too. Egbuka is a really nice buy low right now, essentially an identical timeshare or target share to Marvin Harrison last year. He's coming a little bit behind him so far, 12 targets on the year to 19 for Harrison, 2-game sample, so do with that what you will. Egbuka is used way differently. He's a sort of like the Deebo Samuel of this offense. He gets carries. They use him on jet motions a ton. His role is a little more underneath, but that gives him security, and he can still break off big plays because he's hyper athletic too. I love Ibuka's price. Fleming he was the clear wide receiver 3 last year. His routes are behind Egbuka and Harrison very clearly. He has one more target than Egbuka this year. I think that's mainly noise. I'd rather just find 1,000 to play Egbuka over Fleming.
Chris Carlton, friend of the show, appreciate the super chat. Can we get a flag plant from each of you? Is there something that you feel really strong about today?
I love the flag plant questions. I thought Chris might come with this, so I wanted to be prepared.
Okay.
I'm overweight to the field on Nick Singleton and Katron Allen. I think Penn State's going to smash Illinois, and we're getting a ton of ownership to Braylon and Ches, rightfully so. That team is going to smash. Well, it's mainly Braylon. We're going to get a lot of ownership to Braylon because they're going to smash Georgia Southern. I think there's a chance Penn State just smashes this terrible Illinois defense, and they do a lot of it on the ground. I love Penn State for GPPs. I'm going to play Aller for GPPs, but where I'm overweight to the field is in this backfield.
Yeah, and part of mine, I'm going to kind of take it a little more on the betting side. I think the Penn State-Illinois game could be higher scoring than people anticipate. I wouldn't be surprised if Penn State hangs 40 points on their own. Just to give you an idea, my favorite bet of the day is West Virginia. I know they're not on the slate. I really like the spot for them in Morgantown tonight. I wrote up them over on Odd Shopper. You can read about that. I need them badly tonight to get it done, but we've got one game left. I don't even know why this is on the slate, but I guess it's fine. Tulane and Southern Miss. Southern Miss seems like they got issues. Tulane battled really hard at home, man down with no QB last week. Their backup played very well. What's the situation here in this spot?
I think Pratt plays. The problem is he's 8,800. So you got no discount on Pratt, and he is dealing with a knee injury. So his practice allegedly got ramped up towards the end of the week. Even if he's at like 75% with a knee injury, do we get his rushing floor? I don't know. The guy we really need to focus on is Mekhi Hughes, 22 carries at 4,600. They're nearly 2 touchdown favorites over Southern Miss, who's allowing 8 yards per rush attempt. A lot of that.
Bad.
Yeah, they faced Florida State, if I'm not mistaken. But
they did, 100%.
Yeah, so that'll happen. But still, good matchup for Hughes. He's not really a pass catcher. That's the only worry. If they get down, God forbid, he's not going to be in the game as much. They use Shady Clayton Johnson in that role. But yeah, awesome play. I think he's the preferred cheap back over Cam Porter for Northwestern in this price range. Receivers will be contrarian. If Pratt plays, like Brazel at 4,800 should probably be in a couple lineups. Ultimate late swap pivot from Corley almost at the same price, who's going to be way more owned than Brazel. And then your expensive guys, Keys and Jackson, if you've got like Ibuka or something, you can pivot to these guys too. Because I do think Pratt plays, just not 100% sure. Use your late swap wisely.
Frank Gore, not enough in a situation like this. They are double-digit underdog at home.
They put him in a timeshare with Rodriguez Clark, so no.
That seems
poor auntie.
Good. Byron Brown in the naked in the Superflex or Singleton. I would try to find another quarterback. I wouldn't use Byron Brown personally.
I would not either. I don't have any of him. I got a very rare running back Superflex today, but I am running 150. It was in like single digit numbers. This is almost entirely a quarterback Superflex week.
We had a question, Coleman or Lambert Smith? I assume that's the Florida State Coleman.
I would still play Coleman.
Okay. I think we're in pretty good shape. Oh, yeah. One last question. Pierre mentioned this. Is KJ Jefferson in play over on FanDuel for Arkansas?
Yeah, I have some.
There you go. I think we've done it. I think we've talked about 14 games in about an hour here. We're almost at 100 likes. Let's see if we can get over that number right as we walk out the door here, because if you guys have more questions, we've always got answers for you at Matt_Gajewski, at JazzRazDFS. We're happy to answer anything on Twitter, X, whatever it's called these days. Give us a follow. Slim, Estemian Bowers or Martinez and Burgess, small field, single entry. It would probably be Martinez side for me. What would it be for you?
Yeah, that projects better. If the tournament is big, I don't know, like over 5,000 entries, I do the former for leverage.
Yeah, I would assume small field, single entries probably in the lower there for college, but favorite college prize picks props. Just one more reason to follow Matt on Twitter. You posted your card. I saw it yesterday. And if I could get player props in the betting markets, I would take
got Leonard over 220 passing yards, Beck over 252 for Georgia, Brian Thomas over 54.5 receiving, Bryson Green over 40.5 receiving, Corey Crooms under 51.5 receiving from Minnesota.
Look at that. Those are plays on plays on plays. I think that's a perfect way to end it. Appreciate you guys again. Go get lunch and then get right back here for some NFL content in about an hour. We're going to bounce on out of here. Me, Matt, and the third member of the team, Jacob Roach, making this show go. Appreciate each and every one of you. Go win some money today and then let us know about it here at Stokastic. We want you as part of this community, as part of this team. We're growing quickly and it's because of you guys. Appreciate it. So until next week, until week 4, good luck and enjoy week 3. And we'll see you next week, same time, same place.